cafe froze the moment the boy's crutches slipped. His small body lurched forward, one hand clawing at the air as the metal tips scraped the tiles. Gasps scattered through the room, chairs stilled, and even the old ceiling fan seemed to pause in its slow rotation. Only one man moved, the biker in the corner. The one everyone had quietly avoided since he arrived. His leather vest glinted under the window's sunlight, his tattooed arms tense, his gaze sharp as a blade. And as the boy trembled near the floor with his prosthetic leg buckling, the biker's chair scraped against the tiles. No one expected what he did next. Before this unbelievable moment unfolds, and before we unravel the story behind these two strangers, whose lives will collide in ways no one could imagine. Where are you watching from today? And if powerful, emotional stories like this inspire you, please make sure to subscribe before we continue. Now let's begin. A lonely biker with a haunted past sits alone in a cafe, hardened by years of loss and silence. A disabled boy enters, carrying the quiet courage of a child who has seen more pain than most adults. Their worlds meet in a moment of vulnerability, creating a chain of events that reveals hidden strength, buried trauma, moral tension, and a twist that leaves the entire cafe stunned. Respect, dignity, and silent heroism become the battleground for justice, and the ending proves that kindness from unexpected places can change everything. The biker had arrived before noon, long before the cafe filled with chatter, clinking cups, and the soft hum of morning conversations. People saw him and silently shifted away, choosing other tables, other corners, anywhere except near the man with the weathered face and heavy, set shoulders. His leather vest looked worn from miles of unforgiving roads. His boots carried the dust of places he didn't speak about. And his eyes, deep, storming, restless, carried stories no one dared ask. His name was Rut Maddox, though no one in the cafe knew that. To them, he was just another intimidating biker passing through town. To himself, he was a man drifting through life on borrowed time. Rhett placed his helmet on the table beside him and sat with the stillness of someone who had learned not to disturb the fragile structures inside his own chest. His hands, scarred but gentle, wrapped around a simple cup of coffee. He drank it slowly, letting the bitter warmth settle the shaking inside him. The shaking no one could see. Across the room, a whisper passed between two customers. "I heard bikers like that cause trouble. I wish he'd sit somewhere else." They didn't know the truth. They didn't know the uniform he once wore. They didn't know the cost of silence for a man who had returned from places where silence was the only shield left. But the boy who entered the cafe, he would see something no one else saw. The door swung open with a soft creak, and sunlight washed across the floor. A small figure stepped in, thin, pale, steadying himself on a pair of metal crutches. His left leg was gone from the knee down, replaced by a prosthetic that peeked from under his shorts. His name was Evan. He was 8 years old. And he walked with a determination that belonged to someone who refused to surrender. The cafe quieted as people watched him navigate the entrance. Evan paused, adjusting his crutches, breathing sharply through a moment of pain that flickered across his face. But he didn't cry. He never cried, not in public. He scanned the room. Every table was full except for one. The bikers. Rut looked up, meeting Evan's eyes across the cafe. Their gazes locked, one tired and worn from years of trauma, the other young but shaped by hardship too early. The boy hesitated. The biker raised a brow, curious but unreadable. The room waited. Then Evan slowly made his way toward him. Each step was careful, deliberate, as though he was crossing a battlefield no one else could see. When he reached the table, he lifted his chin, forcing out the courage he had practiced silently countless times. "Can I share this table?" he asked softly. The cafe fell completely silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversations died. Even the judgmental stares hanging over Rhett sharpened, waiting for the worst. But what Rhett did next, no one in that cafe would ever forget. Long before this quiet afternoon, Rhett had worn a uniform, a Marine's uniform. He had survived deserts where the air felt like fire and the nights carried the cries of men who knew they would never see home again. He had led a squad of 7. Strong men, good men, brothers. Only 3 came home. And of those 3, Rhett returned the most shattered. A roadside explosion had thrown him into a ditch, burying him in smoke and screams. His best friend, Danny, had died shielding him. Rhett had walked away, but a piece of him remained on that foreign soil, fused to the memories he couldn't forget. Danny's last words burned worst of all. Make it mean something. For years Rhett had tried. He helped families of fallen soldiers, donated secretly to children's hospitals, visited graves on birthdays. But nothing filled the hollow space where guilt lived like a parasite. His silence was not rudeness. It was survival. His distance was not cruelty. It was punishment he believed he deserved. And today, like every day, Rhett sat alone because loneliness felt safer than hurting anyone else. But when he saw the boy struggling at the door, something deep in his chest shifted. Something he had buried for too long. A sense of duty. A need to protect. A flicker of the man he once had been. He didn't know it yet, but the boy would become the key to unlocking that buried part of him. Even had lost his leg 2 years earlier, after a car crash that had taken his father's life. His mother worked double shifts to keep their home afloat. Even spent afternoons alone, learning how to move again, how to balance, how to brace for the stairs. He hated the stairs more than the pain. Today was supposed to be a treat, a simple lunch after his physical therapy appointment. But the cafe was full and he was tired. He needed to sit. He needed to breathe. He needed to believe that the world still had spaces for people like him. And the only person who wasn't pretending not to see him was the man everyone avoided. Something told Evan that this man, hardened as he looked, would understand what it meant to hurt quietly. Something told him that this table, out of all the others, was the safest one. He just didn't know why yet. Evan swallowed hard. "Can I share this table?" he repeated. Rhett didn't answer immediately. His eyes softened slightly, though no one else noticed. He motioned to the empty seat with the smallest nod. "You can sit," he said simply. Evan eased himself into the chair with careful movements, adjusting his crutches. The room relaxed, but only slightly. People exchanged glances, whispering assumptions the way people do when fear is easier than empathy. Rhett leaned forward. "You all right?" he asked. Evan nodded, though his breathing still trembled. "Just tired," he whispered. "Long day." Rhett understood long days better than anyone. He understood long years. Two men in business attire at the next table exchanged looks. "Unbelievable," one muttered. "They shouldn't seat kids with people like him." "Dangerous," the other said under his breath. Evan heard them. He lowered his head. Rhett heard them too, but he didn't move. His jaw tightened. His fingers curled around his coffee cup. He had been called worse. He had endured worse. But the disrespect directed at the boy made something deep inside him stir. Another whisper drifted from a woman near the counter. "Those biker types, they scare children." But Evan wasn't scared. He was comfortable. Rhett spoke quietly, his voice steady. "You hungry, kid?" Evan nodded. Rhett waved the waitress over with a gentle hand that contradicted his intimidating appearance. "Get him whatever he wants." The waitress hesitated, uncertain. She glanced at the boy, then at the biker, then at the other customers watching with tension thick in the air. Are you sure?" she asked. "I said what I said," he replied. The room stiffened again. People judged. People wondered. People whispered. But Evan smiled, first time that day. A man at the far end, the kind who wore authority like a badge, even when he didn't have one, stood up. His steps were heavy with misguided righteousness as he approached the table. "Hey," he said sharply, pointing at Rhett. "Let the boy sit somewhere else." Rhett's eyes lifted slowly, calmly. "The kid chose the seat," he said. "It's inappropriate," the man insisted. "For who?" Rhett asked. Voice low but razor sharp. "You know damn well why." Evan's breath hitched. His small hands clenched around the edges of the table. Rhett didn't raise his voice. He didn't stand. He simply stared at the man with the unshakable stillness of someone who had survived things the stranger couldn't imagine. The man backed away slightly, though he tried to hide it. A line formed in the air, silent, tense, unmistakable. Rhett took a quiet breath, then he reached into his vest pocket and placed something gently on the table. A worn, metal dog tag. The name etched on it was faded but still visible. It wasn't his. It was Danny's. Evan looked at it with curiosity. The man who had confronted Rhett froze mid-step as he turned back toward the table. A veteran's tag. A fallen soldier's tag. The cafe grew still. Some people lowered their heads. Shame moved through the room like a cold draft. Rhett didn't lift the dog tag to boast. He didn't explain. He didn't defend himself. He simply placed it on the table, letting it speak for him. Evan gently touched the tag with his small fingers. "What is it?" he asked softly. Rhett's voice was low. "It belonged to someone brave. The room heard. The room understood. The room shifted. But the moment wasn't over. The man who had confronted Rhett swallowed hard. He didn't apologize, ego held him back, but his posture crumbled. Still, arrogance dies slowly. "I didn't know," he muttered. Rhett didn't look at him. "You weren't supposed to," he said. Respect doesn't require knowing. A few customers looked away, feeling the sting of those words. Avon watched Rhett with wide, admiring eyes. A quote formed in Rhett's mind, one that Danny used to say during the worst days. "Strength isn't loud. Real strength protects quietly." Rhett whispered it aloud without realizing. Avon repeated it under his breath, memorizing it like a treasure. A young woman sitting near the door stood up. "I'll pay for both their meals," she said firmly. The room turned toward her in surprise. She took a breath, steadying emotion in her voice. "My brother was a Marine. People judged him too. I won't sit here and watch you all do the same." Her words weren't loud, but they cut deeper than any shout. Rhett nodded in gratitude, though his eyes softened with something almost like pain or relief. He didn't want anyone paying for him. But her gesture wasn't about money. It was about honor. And for the first time in a long while, he felt seen. Suddenly the cafe manager rushed in from the back. "Is there a problem here?" he barked, looking annoyed. A few customers pointed subtly toward Rhett and Evan. The manager strode over. "You can't just sit anywhere," he snapped toward Evan. "We're full. You need to wait outside until a table." "He's sitting with me." Rhett interrupted. "That doesn't matter," the manager retorted. "We choose seating arrangements here." Rhett's voice turned cold. He asked politely. "I said yes. That should matter more than whatever rule you're making up." The manager scoffed. "Look, this place has a reputation to maintain. Families don't want." He stopped when Rhett slowly stood up. The biker's full height, scars, tattoos and quiet authority filled the space like a rising tide. But it wasn't intimidation that silenced the manager. It was Rhett's unwavering calm. He slid Danny's dog tag into his palm and spoke in a voice that carried the weight of graves and memories. "The only reputation a place needs is respect. If a child with one leg isn't welcome here, neither am I." The cafe fell into absolute silence. Avon looked up at him with eyes full of awe. The manager's face flushed. He opened his mouth to argue, but before he could, the young woman near the door stepped beside Rhett. Then an older man, then a mother with her toddler, then two teenagers. One by one, customers rose. Not in anger, not in protest, but in solidarity. The manager stared stunned. Rhett said nothing. He didn't need to. His silence carried more force than any speech, and in that heavy, perfect moment, the power shifted completely. The manager finally deflated. "Stay," he muttered. "Both of you. Sit wherever you want." He retreated toward the counter, shame dragging behind him. Even let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Rhett sat back down. The crowd slowly returned to their seats, though their energy had changed, warmer. Evan smiled softly. "Thank you for standing up for me." Rhett shook his head. "No, kid. You stood up just fine when you walked through that door." Evan blinked, surprised. Rhett added, "Courage isn't about having two legs. Courage is about walking into rooms where people don't expect you." The boy held onto those words like they were a shield. And for the first time in years, Rhett felt something loosen inside his chest, a knot tied by guilt slowly unraveling. Maybe Danny was right. Maybe kindness was enough to make it mean something. The cafe returned to normal, but the atmosphere was transformed. People approached Rhett quietly, thanking him. Some apologized. Some offered nods of respect. But none of it compared to the way Evan looked at him, as if Rhett were the kind of hero he never believed he still was. When they finally finished eating, Evan stood on his crutches, steady and confident. "Can I sit with you again sometime?" he asked. Rhett smiled, a rare, genuine smile that softened every hard line on his face. "Anytime, kid." As Evan left the cafe, sunlight catching his steps, Rhett whispered the words he once promised Danny. "I'll make it mean something." And that day, in the most unexpected moment, with the most unlikely friend, he finally did. If this story moved you, remember this. Silent strength changes the world quietly, one act of respect at a time, and sometimes, the most unexpected people become the greatest heroes. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? And if you want more powerful, emotional stories like this, make sure to subscribe.